Omentilvo. A star shines on the hour of our meeting.
The war had ended. Melkor was chained. The world, though scarred, had found silence again. But it was not peace. It was waiting. Arda lay in twilight. No sun, no moon. Only the stars above, distant, faint, scattered. Time passed, perhaps for years, perhaps for ages. The Valar had withdrawn to the west. There, behind the Pelori Mountains, they began to heal what had been broken. But far to the east, something greater stirred. For the children of Ilúvatar were soon to awaken. The firstborn, the Elves. And Ilúvatar had willed that they would open their eyes beneath the stars, not the light of day, not the fire of war, but the untouched light of the heavens. So the Valar waited. But not all were content to wait in shadow. She who walked among the stars. She who the elves would call Elbereth Gilthoniel. She who had heard the first music clearest of all. Varda looked to the east, and she gathered the light. From the deeps of space she drew it. From the wells of her spirit she wove it. And she lit the sky. New stars were born, bright and pure and strong. She named them, each one a gift. And the world, for the first time, saw brilliance untainted by fire or grief. In this episode of the Valinor Archives, we tell the story of that light, of the voice who placed the stars, and the beings who woke beneath them. This is the birth of beauty, and the dawn of the elves. Here at the Valinor Archives, we preserve these sacred tales. If you walk beneath the stars as they did, subscribe and walk with us. The chains of Melkor were cold, but the shadow he had cast was not gone. Utumno was in ruins, his armies were scattered, and the fires he had kindled were slowly dying. Yet the world remained wounded. Mountains still groaned where they had been torn. Forests struggled to regrow. The sea remembered the rage of the storm. Even in the west, where the Valar had retreated, there was no true peace. Only rebuilding, only waiting. They had done what was necessary. They had unmade what he had twisted. But in doing so, they had touched destruction, and it had changed them. Owl no longer sang with the same joy. Ulmo's waters ran deeper, slower, more solemn. Even Yavanna, whose green hand could coax beauty from ash, moved with caution. And in the east, there was silence. No birds sang, no beasts stirred. The stars shone on stillness. The Maiar, lesser spirits who walked unseen, whispered to one another of unease. The air felt heavy, the wind uncertain. Dreams, even in Lorien's halls, turned restless. It was not yet a world for the children of Ilúvatar. It waited, holding its breath. The Valar knew the elves would awaken. They did not know when, nor where, only that it would be beneath the stars, and in that uncertainty, fear began to return. For though Melkor had been taken, his malice had seeped into the bones of the world. It whispered from cracks in the stone. It lingered in the cold places of the north. And it watched. There were rumors, beasts moving where none should be, storms that formed with no wind, eyes in the dark. The Valar debated. Should they search for the elves? Should they reach into the east and guide their destiny? Or should they wait and let fate unfold? Some feared too much interference, others feared too little. But one thing was clear: Arda was not whole. And in the twilight, even the stars seemed to question what was to come. Before the children, before the sun and moon, before even hope had a name, there were the stars, and she who lit them was Varda. In the timeless halls of Valinor, Varda stood apart. She was revered not only for her wisdom, but because she alone had looked upon the face of Ilúvatar before the beginning of time. She had heard the music most clearly, and her hand moved with its echo. Where others shaped stone or sea, Varda wove light. She did not build with tools, she crafted with vision. And now, she turned her gaze eastward. She saw the stillness. She felt the breath of Arda, waiting. And she knew the hour was near. So she rose. From the wells of crystal in Valinor, she drew the pure light. From the memory of the first music, she summoned its harmony. And she climbed the silver stair to the outer sky. There she began her great work. One by one she kindled the stars. Some she placed with care, gentle, distant. Others she hurled like lances into the night, bold and burning. She named them all. Carneal, red and strong. Alcarinque, glittering with golden pride. Elenluin, blue and steady. Lumbar, pale and ghostly. But her greatest gift was the constellation called Melkor, the swordsman of the sky. A foretelling, a warning, a promise. For he bore a shining blade, and in his stance, the elves would see the omen of war to come. And then she made her crown, Valasirka, the sickle of the Valar. 7 burning stars curved like a blade. They turned forever above the north, defying the darkness of Melkor's old dominion. No shadow would stand beneath them. But it was not only the sky that changed. When Varda's stars awoke, the whole world seemed to rise with them. Mountains shimmered with silver light. The oceans reflected constellations like ancient mirrors. Forests, though quiet, glowed with a quiet breath. And the winds, once restless, whispered songs of wonder. Even the Valar were moved. Manwë, from his high seat, bowed his head. Yavanna stood in stillness among her trees. Ulmo stilled the waves to listen. And Nienna wept, not in sorrow, but in awe. For this was no longer a world of shadow. This was a world waiting to be seen. And it was Varda's light that would be first to greet the firstborn. She did not just make stars, she made memory, a beacon written into the soul of the elves. From that moment forward, they would revere the night. Their poetry would sing of Elbereth. Their hearts would stir beneath the constellations she named. And even in later ages, when towers fell and darkness rose again, the stars would remain, silent, enduring, watching, and always remembered. And far to the east, where the stars now shimmered like fire in glass, something ancient stirred. Eyes opened for the first time, and the stars were the first thing they saw. The elves had awakened. And if this tale moved you, leave your thoughts in the archives below. The Valinor Archives is made brighter with each voice that joins our fellowship. No one saw it happen, not even the Valar. There was no trumpet, no thunder, no sudden flame, only stillness and starlight. By the waters of Cuiviénen, they awoke. The elves, the firstborn of Ilúvatar. There, beneath the constellations Varda had kindled, they opened their eyes. And the first thing they saw was beauty. The stars reflected on the still waters. The breeze danced through silver trees, and the silence was not empty. It was sacred. They rose, unafraid. They felt the wind and named it. They heard the water and sang with it. They looked to the sky and felt something older than memory stir within them. They were not taught to speak. They simply could. For Ilúvatar had placed language in their hearts, and their first songs were full of wonder. They named the lake. They named each other. And in doing so, they began to name the world. Tall and fair they were, with eyes like starlight, graceful in body and deep in thought. They did not grow from childhood. They were made as they were, complete. And their minds reached out to the world around them with awe, not fear. They did not ask why they lived. They asked what they could learn. Some sang, some danced, some walked among the trees listening. Others waded into the water, laughing with new voices. They discovered joy and love and the power of naming. Cuiviénen became their cradle, its shores their first home, its waters their first mirror. The stars above became more than lights. They became guides, companions, memory itself. Each constellation whispered to them as if the sky remembered their names before they spoke them. And as the stars wheeled overhead, the elves danced beneath them. Timeless, ageless, new. They did not know of Melkor. They did not know of the Valar. They only knew the sky, the water, the wind, and each other. In those first moments, before shadow returned, the world was as Ilúvatar had dreamed it, and the elves were awake. Their awakening is only the beginning. Subscribe to the Valinor Archives and witness what came after, when shadow found them. The elves had awakened, and though their joy was pure, the world around them was not. In Valinor, the Valar felt the change. Their hearts stirred. They knew the time had come to act. But doubt divided them. Should they go to the elves? Would their presence guide or control? Melkor was chained in the halls of Mandos, but his hatred had not faded, and the cold places of the world still bore his mark. He had once walked the stars. Now he watched from the shadows between them, and as the elves began to explore, to wander beyond Cuiviénen, he found them. He learned their names before the Valar did. He whispered to them. He twisted what they saw. The Valar hesitated, and in that hesitation, darkness moved first. The world had changed, and though the stars still shone, a shadow had begun to grow beneath them. This was not the end of the story. It was the first choice in a long war of light and darkness. And if you wish to walk deeper into the legend, subscribe to the Valinor Archives, where the lost histories of Arda find their voice.